All right, well, let's go ahead and start dipping into said topic here, which is going to be My Little Pony Collectible Card Game Deck Building. As we mentioned several times, regionals are coming up. There's going to be more sets of the card game coming out. The card game is exploding. It is going places. So some of you may have not had a chance to build a deck yet, or you're just barely learning. Or some of you might be a few old pros and you don't know that you're doing something horrible to your decks and making little girls cry and making people wonder how in the world you manage to breathe and sleep at night. Apparently one of us breathes very heavily. But in any case, we're going to go. It's time for us to talk about how to create your decks. Now, I'm going to start off here with an article that actually came up from a website called ponycard.net. I have to admit, I've been going to them a few times to check out some of their articles, including deck building strategies, different ways to play different cards, and all the fun little things that they come out with. It's actually been a really awesome site since I heard about it. This is one thing I read that I have to admit, it threw my strategy completely out the window in a few cases. I was doing some really stupid stuff and didn't realize it. But we're going to go ahead and go through each of these one by one and talk a little bit more about it in our terms and views. Starting with sin number 10. Number 10 being, thou shalt not pick variety over consistency. Of course, the basic idea behind that is have more of the same card as opposed to random cards all over the place.
Because having two pair sprites out at the same time is better than having one yellow pair sprite and one purple pair sprite.
Well, not just that.
Because you're just discarding their hands.
Well, it's not just that. You also got the random fact that you literally have random cards. If you're not focusing on what you want your deck to do, it can actually end up hurting you. 3 yellow pair sprites is definitely going to do a lot more damage than 3 random pair sprites that may be useful, but you're not going to pull as consistently.
Hello.
Hey, Blink, welcome back.
Say hi, bud.
What's up?
Hey.
Oh, and Steve.
Oh, is that D?
It's D.
D and Inky are here, so
It's
that's
D and
who's on for a
Inky.
minute.
Wait, D?
D and
Yeah,
Inky.
yeah.
Yeah, they
Oh,
went
hey there.
They went
Yeah,
to
let me
Fiesta
get him.
Equestria. Now they're saying hi to Blink there.
Hold it. He's not on quite yet. I gotta give him the key to the house and everything. Don't
Okay.
start on you little goobers.
Say what?
Is that your
The
sibling?
kids.
Ah, I see. All right. But let's go ahead and go through this a little more. A big thing I could pull up here when it comes to card consistency.
So did I hear D?
Yes, for a
Yes,
little bit.
you did.
Where
He's right
can
here.
He wants the D.
He's trying to
Give him
get. He's
the
trying
D.
to get on right now.
I just want to hear his voice before I head out.
Oh, you're leaving already?
No.
Oh, right.
I'm not.
I know what you
Suck
mean.
it.
I know what you mean. I'm just messing with you.
There we go. Good man. All right, keep talking until he's fucking ready or something.
Right. Okay, so back to the
Dead
discussion
silent,
here. Yes, the big rule here is consistency. Admittedly, this one I had a bit of a hard time doing when I was first getting into card games in general. I just got hundreds of cards. I loved this one. I loved that one. I wanted to put them all in there. My Magic and Yu-Gi-Oh decks were horrible. Oh dear world. I'm not
I had
kidding.
this problem way back in the day playing the old Star Wars card game, because I would have these cards like, of course I'm going to play Han Solo. Of course I'm going to play Luke Skywalker.
There was
Of
a
course I
Star
play
Wars cards game?
Oh yeah, like early '90s. I'm showing my age here.
Yeah, no
there was
worries,
an
I
old one,
actually
then
know
there was
that
like
one
a
too.
new one, and I
Then
digress.
episode 1 happened.
Yeah, and destroyed
All I
everything.
remember from the 90s that was card game based was Pokemon.
Yeah, there was a Marvel one that I played back in the day called Overpower, and it didn't last super long. And then there's a Star Wars one. Of course, Magic was going on at this time too, so this was just like, if you didn't want to play Magic, you played one of these other games.
You played
And
something
Pokemon
else. That's
came
pretty
along.
much it. Yeah.
But yeah, I did this exact thing too, even with this game a little bit, because it was like, you get a card and it's like, why wouldn't I run this? Because on paper it looks like a great card, but once you just kind of decide what you want your deck to do, you can say, okay, how many of this card do I need, and how much am I going to count on getting this card into my hand? I was a player back in the day, and I'm really, I don't think this is on the list, was run is like the minimum card, like if you look in the rule book, it says the minimum amount of cards you can have in your draw deck is 45 cards.
Yep.
you should probably stay as close to that as possible.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I ran almost as... I think at one point I did run a 60-card deck, and it's not like it won't work, but...
D! Yes!
Yeah.
Oh my god, I missed you!
Hello, D.
I missed you too.
All
Oh my
right.
god, it's so good to hear your voice after a goddamn week!
It is. Oh,
A week.
I am sitting on your phone. I'm sitting on my boss's phone.
Yes, it is. It's hilarious.
Now I've lost it, actually.
Oh, God, you lost it to your butt?
Echo.
Echo.
Wow, that was a heck of an
No,
echo.
unfortunately, we're right next to each other.
Yeah, we're in the same room. That's why.
Yeah, good point. I guess you can.
Did you miss me,
Guys,
D?
guess what? Guess
Cody,
what?
put on your camera.
Casual.
Put on your camera!
My camera doesn't work, actually.
Trying to get back onto topic here a little bit.
Yeah.
One thing
I do have one quick thing about this that's kind of important to really. I've read this article a few months ago when it came out, and one important grain of salt you need to take with whenever someone's giving deck advice. The number one rule is if it's good advice, follow it. Number two is as long as it works for your deck. There will always be a deck that has an exception to the rule. Like for example, this article and this example is recommending basically going 3 of for everything possible. And most really competitive decks, almost everything will be a 3 of. But there's also something to be said about the kind of like what Checkmate was saying about getting cards when you needed them, but then also understanding that maybe having 3 copies of every card may not always be the best idea. Not every deck, even if you're splashing Forest Owls into a deck, which has a flip of 0 but it gives everything +1, just because you can run 3 does not mean you should. Yeah, you want to get your owls out, but once you have 1 or 2 owls out, that 3rd owl is sitting in your deck with a power of 0 for a face-off. You don't necessarily want that. So you really need to keep in mind what your deck is trying to do, because there are definitely times when you might want to only have 1 or 2. Usually 1 copy of a card won't happen at the really competitive level, but 2 definitely happens all the time. So don't feel like you have to only run the copies of a card.
Yeah, 3. There's plenty of cards I have in my deck I run 2 of, but 2 works really well for it. If I ran 3 Nightmare Moons, I would probably be killing myself every single game.
Yeah,
every
If you
single
fill your
game.
deck with 3 copies of every vanilla friend, like, friends that have a power, but you don't need a play requirement. If you just run as many as you can of all of them, you're going to have a lot of bloat in your deck.
Sometimes you only have one of one card, too, so, like,
Yeah,
most people...
I only have 1 Chrysalis. So
Yeah,
I
or one truly outrageous. But
And I have only 1 Heart's Desire, but I still run it anyway, because you never know if it might actually pop up and be useful.
Yeah, ultra rares in particular are good to have just 1 of if that's all you own, because you can get a lot of utility out of them, so long as your deck is built to actually get a use out of it.
Yeah, but just a good rule of thumb, majority of your cards should at least try to be consistent, and a good number of them, but it's okay splashing 2s or even just 1 card of different types. But again,
whenever I'm building a deck, I imagine the movie poster, and I think, what's the tagline going to be? Like, what is this going to be about? And then I start looking at cards, and I'm like, okay, who do I cast for this movie? Like, what if I want my movie to be Citizen Kane? I'm not going to cast Chris Farley.
Yes, that would be awesome.
Hey! We lost him before he truly hit his prime. You don't know if he could have done this game. He could have been.
We already
great.
passed that. What's up, Brony part? Are we on this shit now?
Dude, it's over an hour ago.
Yeah, and
You
you know what?
missed
I
out.
wasn't here
It's-
over an hour ago.
We're doing your favorite subject.
Well, I'll tell you what,
card game.
we'll do a little What's Up Brony with you as soon
Great,
as we
because I
finish
just
the
got back
discussion.
from a freaking Houston convention, for the love of God.
Of course, and I'm sure you got plenty to talk about since you...
Plus, I've got my boss here, who's the head of the damn pony museum.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, too.
Yeah,
I just got back from Everfree, and that was crazy.
I don't
too.
care. Talk to them.
Okay, while we got 3 people squabbling in a room, next rule on list here, or we'll call them guidelines. Next, a strongly enforced guideline. Thou shalt not avoid the path of least resistance. Admittedly, this one kind of throws me off a little bit. Let's see. If any of our opponents are you can move a friend,
I read what he was saying, too.
Yeah, but it really helps to play a lot. Things become complicated when you have 2 power and play to move, 2 power and hand.
It's more or less trying to say, like, if you've got a hand of cards and you have cards on the board and you've got a certain amount of action tokens, you're going to do the thing that's most efficient. Like, sometimes you can overthink how you're handling, how you're doing a turn, but sometimes you may have friends you want to play, but if you need to move your friends to confront a problem, you need 4 power, and you have 2 power friends on the board, but you really want to play that other one in your hand, you're going to just pay the 4 and move because it's going to be more efficient. You don't necessarily want more targets. Now, the thing is, that's also very situational. Like, you may want to have as many friends as possible because you might play a card like the new Pinky Party Pony, whatever her subtitle is for the new name.
Right,
yeah, Pokey Pony. There we go. Where you might want to have as many mains as possible because you're going to be retiring your own to do effects. So it's all about efficiency. At the end of the day, your deck needs to be efficient, and you can't really fight that.
Yeah.
Right.
Most times it's good to just, if you can just move 2 characters and score a point, then score a bonus. You score the points to get a bonus, and you bank those extra tokens. But like, a lot of people will fall into that pitfall of, well, I have Octavia in my hand, and I really want to play her because I really like Octavia. So you move like a character for 2, and then you spend the 5 to drop an Octavia, and it may not necessarily be the most efficient at that turn. Sometimes it is because the Octavia move restriction is great, but it just depends on what the game state is. But more often than not, keep it simple, and you'll be better off in the end because this game will be, more often than not, at least in the games that I'm playing, are decided by having just that one extra action token that you need.
It's always one more token. If any one phrase was spoken more than anything at our store championship this past weekend, it was, I needed one more token and I could have won.
Seriously, still on this fucking card thing.
We've been at it for 10 minutes, bro.
Where did they start?
All right, moving right along here. Next, thou shalt not play more friends than needed. This one, I admit I haven't exactly done this, but then again, I've been against Swarm decks, so I've kind of been overloading myself because if I didn't, there was a good chance I would suddenly be overloaded.
Yeah, there's good reason for this. Number one, if you're playing friends that have 1 cost to play, and you dump your entire hand over 2 turns onto the board, there are decks that are meant to do that, but if that's not an actual
my deck will have
strategy,
a field day.
yeah. If you just dump friends, those friends, they may have cost 1 to play, and you got them all out, but think about it. Now, the next time you need them, you have to pay 2 to move them. So if you'd only played what you needed, you would have been more efficient later on in the game, which back to 1 more action token. Yeah. And also, we're getting more and more cards now that when your opponent has a bunch of friends that are a problem, you just have an absolute field day because you frighten them all, or you get a power bonus for each one that's there. It gets really nasty.
Or even better, your opponent just
becomes a battleship.
Or your opponent just happens to have spring
fever. It's all
fever.
about knowing what you need to play and where. Like, yeah, overloading to a problem may work sometimes, but it could be the death of you. Goosebump Giver is one good example.
Mm-hmm.
And
actually, another one is just Spring Fever on the purple side. One card. Spring Forward, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
But yes, still painful.
I mean, she might have Spring Fever. I don't know.
Yeah. All right, next rule on the list, thou shalt not play any unnecessary troublemakers.
Yeah, this is something that I see a lot of newer players in our playgroup doing, where they'll get in, especially if they're not doing as well, like if they're losing the game, and they think, oh, well, my opponent's scoring more points than me, I need to stop them. I will stop them by playing this Trollmaker, and I will rely on getting high flip in the face-off to try and stop them. So they'll play cards like Yellow Parasprite or Timberwolves or Manticore really late in the game when someone has like 7, 8, 9 power at a problem, and all that's doing is giving your opponent free points. But they don't, like, all they think is, well, I need to block the problem. But then they don't see the fact that the Troublemaker is just going to die doing the exact thing that they don't want to do, which is give them points.
Yeah. So you end up spending an action token and giving them free points.
Yeah, you're paying to give them a higher score than you.
Yeah, when you put up a Parasprite just to watch it fail the next turn, you start to learn that you got to time yourself. And sometimes even if you get that Troublemaker you were looking for, it may be too late to play it, and you just have to keep it in your hand.
Yeah, or it's good discard fodder if you have to discard and draw, or playing something like Nice Moves Kid or AK Yearling where you get to take from your deck and then discard from your hand. It's great discard material. It's great.
Snooty Boutique. Most Trollmaker's great flip, so you just put it on top of your deck.
Yep. Or Donut Joe. Time to make the donuts.
Yep.
There you go. Yeah.
Pump things.
All right. Next rule: Thou shalt not inspire everything. Admittedly, this one is a little bit more context specific, especially if you play white decks. But yeah, pretty much the whole idea here is do not keep using Inspire or do not keep throwing your opponent's cards under their deck. Sometimes it's a good idea to just know what's coming up instead of just dropping their hand so that they just have to keep pulling the next card up.
Yeah, you can definitely tell that this card was written during when Premier was the only set out, because that was back in the day when a contingent of players were calling Inspire really overpowered. And so I guess they thought it deserved a spot on this article. But yeah, there are some players in our playgroup too who will they basically tried to make a whole gimmick deck just out of the Inspire mechanic. And like it can work. Like you can color screw your opponent out of drawing cards that they need really quickly, but those cards with Inspire tend to have really low power, and so you may be able to manipulate their whole deck, but they'll eventually play enough cards that you won't have a board presence.
And just
16 of your deck, please.
And for those of you who don't know what Inspired is, it's a pretty simple card effect. Essentially, during your main phase, if you have a card with Inspired on the field, you get to look at your opponent's top card on their deck. You can decide if it stays on the top of the deck or if it goes down to the bottom of the deck.
Of course, when you have more than one, you look at that many at a time.
Yeah, you do it. They do stack, but they only go one at a time, so you can't pull 3 cards and then organize them how you want. No, you got to do one.
No, they all go at the same time.
Really? I thought it was one at a time.
Yeah, it's a simultaneous action.
Oh, huh. So I got the ruling wrong there then. My bad.
Which is why I run Rarity.
But yes, let's see. Is there a difference between the CCG and the TCG? Yes, this collectible card game is just the collectible cards. You just collect them. They don't have any real play value, and they're just there to have.
The TCG is a game because you're being played. Those cards aren't worth anything.
Well, TCG and CCG are an intermingling term that it's the same thing. It's marketing. Games used to be called TCGs because they want to trade, but then like it's the crazy parents in the 90s and kids were trading Pokemon cards, and first edition Charizard was $200, and little Jimmy didn't know Charizard was worth $200, but he really wanted Blastoise, and he traded for the Blastoise, and it just became this thing about how trading turned into gambling for some reason, and so like some people would argue that at that generation would argue that like, oh well, that's a bad connotation. So newer games that came after, probably in the mid to late 2000s, started calling them collectible card games to advertise, oh well, you can collect them all, and it's like to encourage more purchases of that kind of stuff. So it's really just a marketing term. TCG and CCG are the same thing.
Anyway,
I never heard TCG until Pokemon came around, because I'd always heard Star Wars and even Overpowered referred to as a collectible card game.
I didn't even notice.
I wonder when that shift was when they tried to.
Pokemon was one of the few games that ever used the words TCG, because Magic just MTG.
Still use TCG.
Did they really? Okay.
Yeah, no.
Because everyone just called them MTG, so I'm just like whatever. But I know Pokemon, they use TCG. Duel Masters, I think, used TCG in the short time frame that card game existed. But after that it was all CCGs. So I'm pretty sure it was because I was in elementary school when that game came out, and like all the public schools banned Pokemon because they saw it as a gambling tool. Because trading turned into like
dumb.
Trading turned into like a criminal act of like, oh well, trading is just the way kids rip off other kids.
Well, it's because you got overprotective parents and stupid kids. A little bit of both.
I sold candy in elementary school, and I made a good fucking profit off of it.
Well, just to answer some questions here in the chat, we are going to we're going to show off a few websites that you can go to for trading card rules, suggestions, also just for general, in case you want to talk to people about deck ideas, things like that. So for those of you trying to figure out what the rules are or have questions, we're going to give you a few sites to go to that you can get your questions answered.
I will say this, Enterplay seems to have taken a shotgun approach towards social media and rules and all that. So if it seems confusing to find the things you're looking for, it is. The data is out there, and I think Circuit is making a point of showing you where you can find it. but hopefully, like Interplay will actually use their website for something. And I mean, that sounds like
graduate from
well,
1994.
in defense of Interplay, they do have the comprehensive extended rules on their site, but yeah, admittedly, it doesn't go over the nuances or the little questions that people have here and there. So sometimes you got to rely on groups or random insane people that actually try this crap out and figure out how does this work.
Yeah, the
ruling
official. Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if a ruling doesn't make sense to you, don't be afraid to ask a second opinion, because even with what happened with Poor Circuit right here, is that someone can tell someone else a ruling and they take it like it's the word of God and they just run with it. Like, does that make sense?
Oh,
like,
yeah, but back before... I mean, I'm sure Deal and Checkmate probably remember this scenario. A player who I will refuse to name, back before Comprehensive Rules 1.0 came out, when there were no comprehensive rules and it was literally just developers posting stuff on Facebook, I was in the volunteer group, and we would basically get email, like we could email questions and then email back official rulings and go, this is what the comprehensive rules will say. At the time, the way the community calls the fixer cards, which are cards like World Guidance, which say, you know, play on a purple or yellow friend, it gets +1 purple, +1 yellow. People were confused about the wording, and the wiki at the time had a different wording of how it worked than the latest dev email that I had received. And so at the tournament, I was ruling it a certain way, and the player who was playing the game was going off of the wiki, which had different text, and he almost had an altercation with me over the fact that I disagreed with the wiki, and I was like, I'm just going off what the devs told me, man. He got really upset.
Admittedly, that's because it probably crumbled his whole deck structure. Right
and it's like, at that point too, like, I mean, I'm the acting TO, and I'm the judge, and so I was like, this is how it's going to go, and he just would not have it, and it's just, you know, some people are just like that, but you know, luckily now we have comprehensive rules, so things like that aren't necessarily a problem, because you can actually go, this is the ruling, okay, but. Of course, every card game deals with that process of when the game's new, they have to develop their tournament rules and do all that stuff. So all that stuff gets shaped up over time.
Yeah, they even came out with new terms lately, which completely went over my head for a while. Basically, the difference between dismissing versus what was that other term?
Retirement.
Yeah, that one. Retirement threw me off forever. Right?
And now we have Ready and Rally.
Yeah, Rally was another one that completely drove me crazy until
the reason they did it is it's a very technical reason, so I'll be brief about it. So basically, kind of like how playing and putting in a play are different, rallying a friend and unfrightening a friend are also different. Rally is the act of paying 2 to unfrighten a friend. Unfrightening a friend is using a card effect to make a friend unfrightened. So it's like little things like that, like they're really syntaxy, and to like a casual player, it's like, well, why do they need a different term? Well, when you get to the tournament level and there are a lot of moving parts going on, you need to have that differentiation of how did that card get unfrightened? Did you pay the 2? Was it another effect? Like, cards will trigger off of different wording. So
not only that, but it allows them to print a much wider effect range. Like,
you can customize cards way more. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's go ahead and get right back here. And just real fast, no, these are not the 10 Commandments. These are the 10 sins that new players tend to make with the card game. So basically, they're the 10 things that we should advise you the most of, more than anything here. Next, thou shalt not rush into a double face-off too soon. And yes. I can attest to this way, way, way too much. There's been so many times I've pushed for a double face-off against the Rainbow Dash deck, and I ended up getting a ton of points, but I'm like 2 behind to win, and then he suddenly sweeps the board the entire next turn, and that's it. I'm done.
Who double face-offs too early gives opponent more than 8 points in 1 turn.
Hey, Circuit.
Yeah.
He was pissed that you weren't there on Thursday, so you were when you see him next, he might just call you a fuckface.
Oh, for crying out loud, I was sick. What do you want? Besides, I wasn't exactly thrilled either. I missed my chance to build a deck and try for the Orem tournament. Anyway, back to here.
Yes, that's when you double face off. There's a lot of things to consider, and normally I wouldn't suggest thinking. I would always suggest thinking a turn ahead. That's really important toward game strategy, but not really more than 2 because the game's so dynamic. But the reason you always want to be a turn ahead is you know what your problem deck is. So you know, like, if you're going to dual face off, what are the odds your opponent's going to attack both? You got to know, I don't know if my opponent's running Wing Wonder or not, but if he's running blue, has he played one yet? If not, there's a good chance he's holding on to one. There's just a lot of things you got to think about when you're initiating a double face-off. One of them being, how quickly can you get back to problems after you double face-off? So,
Yep.
I don't know.
So just basically, unless you're running a really aggressive or fast-paced deck, you can pace yourself, pull back a little bit. If a double face-off isn't either going to win you the game or there's no way your opponent can recover, you might want to rethink about throwing all your cards to the table, both in a literal and physical sense.
There are a couple cards that will help you give you some control when you're playing against blitzy decks and you need to double to score fast enough. The two that come off the top of my head are Nurse Redheart and Plum Tucker, and of course Standstill. So 3. But those can if you're the kind of deck that needs to double, but it's not the fastest deck ever. Those are good compromise cards to put into screw your opponent right when they're about to meet their requirement for their double face-off. Because a lot of times they'll plan out their tokens to the last token to be able to double. Mm-hmm. So if you just shut them down that last second. Best case scenario, they got 3 friends that are a problem, but they can't confront. You guys spring forward. Robbie, tell me that hasn't happened before.
Oh yeah.
All right. Okay. Do we have anything else to add to that, or should we go on to the next one?
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. Okay. Now this one is definitely a biggie for anybody. Do not panic, or at least panic draw.
Do not draw. Please do not.
Yes, do not start
one at a time.
Yes, do not start dumping points to draw cards. Do not start randomly drawing as fast as you can, trying to find something. Keep calm, even if things are completely against you and it look like you're about to get beaten down.
Yeah, and even just to clarify off of what Deal said, that is the biggest no-no I see a lot of people doing is in a group, I'll pay 2 and draw 2 cards. Why would you want to pay 2 and draw 2 cards when you can just pay 1 and draw 1, and that card could be that card? Why preemptively draw more cards than you need, also giving yourself few action tokens? It's just a lose-lose situation. Yeah, you may get the card you need, but now you can't play it. Silence.
Yeah, well,
I agree.
I can't agree any further on that.
Nothing else really to say to that. It's
drop the mic.
Bitch, be cool.
You got it. He dropped the mic there.
Fly casual.
All right, moving right along. Here's another one, and admittedly, this one I'm a little bit itchy on, but I do kind of agree to some extent. Thou shalt not play entry friends in your primary color. The whole idea of entry friends are friend cards that do not have a cost requirement in color.
Depends on your color.
Yeah, this is the one that I don't like. With all respect to the person writing the article, I don't really understand the logic behind this one because there are plenty of decks that do really well playing the entry characters of their color.
Number one, yellow poops all over this.
There
are cards. And there are cards like Action Shot where there's no color requirement, but that card alone can let you confront 3-point problem.
Yeah, by Bright Bulb.
Yeah, the best thing I can throw out to this one though, if you have one card that is 1 cost for 1 action and that's it, you have another card that is 1 cost for 1 action and also has an effect and maybe even a color requirement that you already can complete just by starting the freaking game. Yeah, fair enough. That swap out for that. You'll have an extra effect. You'll also have something a little more wider. That's not too bad.
You can make it wider, man. The other another going off that, another similar thing is it's basically what you just said, but with a little more context. You always, if you have a card that the perfect example I use a lot of time is Sugar Twist and Sapphire Shores. As long as you're not needing a Pegasus for a specific effect, and you can only run one of the 2 vanilla whites, it's almost always better to run Sapphire Shores just because she's the same thing as Sugar Twist with another effect. And even if you're not running a lot of accessories, there might be that random time someone plays an accessory on you, but you can use her effect to just kill it off. So, again, most decks will probably run both to help fix the color. But if you're in a situation where you can play a 2/2 with nothing and a 2/2 that has a silly effect that might not you might not use, but you could always play the one that has the effect. The same thing of like House Mouse versus Winona. They're the exact same card, but Winona gets to be a bomb dog, as Deal likes to say. So if you can only pick one, obviously you want to go for Winona because Winona gets to do an extra thing the House Mouse can't do for free.
There you go. Of course.
Then there's also like fodder to be considered with new Pinky. I have Pinky in there, and I don't run high spirits, but I do run like flitter. Well, yeah, mainly flitter, but like having the one drops that don't really make sense late game have their merits in the proper decks. Particularly with Pink because it has random, which is actually quite interesting with pump cards, because when you flip that second card, if you have more than one pump character, you can put one under each, which is great. We'll say this though: the only friend this whole thing doesn't apply to is Berry Dreams. If you have Berry Dreams in your deck, take her out.
Just don't do it. That the cardinal sin of the CCG. Don't play Berry.
Friends do not let friends play Berry Dreams.
Yep.
Unless you're playing a full playset of foil Berry Dreams, then you're good to go.
Or you're playing a goof deck and just want Berry Dreams for the sake of hilarity.
As long as you're playing Berry Dreams on top of a firework.
Alright. But in any case, we can get into the sins of horrible cards that should have never existed, but we'll get to that another point. And here's the next one, and this one, admittedly, I even seen some supplementaries to this in other discussion groups I've been in, but thou shalt not leave a problem half solved. Essentially, you do not don't go after a problem halfway and not have enough friends to cover up cost. Though, admittedly, this one has me a little thrown off a little bit as well.
Yeah, this one shows its premierness.
Yeah,
I would give the stipulation of depending on the color you're playing. If you're playing pink against pink or against purple, I would definitely advise against doing that. But if you're playing against a blue deck, you're gonna, even if you know you can't confront and they're gonna confront next turn and do a double face-off, you're gonna want to have as much power at that problem as you possibly can.
Right.
Yes and no. If they're low-value problems, I would say hold on to your action tokens and see if the next problem set has higher points.
This is also...
And also, there are certain problems, especially in this set, that like if you exhaust the main while they're at that problem, you get an extra bonus. So it might be worthwhile just to move your main up and use that effect if you know that it has a way of benefiting you.
Yeah.
There's even some problems that benefit those who get a friend on there first. That one particular one, Spring Break, Winter Wrap-Up Cleanup.
Yeah.
The moment you get a friend on there, you get 2 extra action tokens. Who in the world wouldn't want to milk that?
Deal and Checkmate know how that has saved my ass plenty of times in my old.
It has only bit me in the butt, and it's always been against blue, so I never use Wrapping Up Winter.
Admittedly, though, there is one other thing I read that kind of supplements to this. Of course, I haven't had a good chance to exercise this since I haven't been able to invest too much in Counter-a-Lot Nights so far. But the thing was that for a problem card, that you try to set it up so that you have enough friend cards that you can confront problem cards without having to double or triple up your cards, essentially one for each. Of course, I'm kind of hesitant on that one as well. You got some problem cards that have a 4 purple. I have not seen any 4 purples that aren't either ridiculously high priced or really hard to pull off in some cases.
Yeah, that's a rule that's really hard to meet because a lot of the friends that are like that are either like really high cost or requirement, or like they don't really have synergy with your deck theme. Like it's okay to play 3 cards or 4 cards to meet a problem. In fact, some of them are mandatory. Like what is it? Cheering up a friend?
Cheering up a friend.
So plan to have your deck have a little bit of like form to it if that's the case, and like you don't have. This is another thing. You don't have to spend all your tokens every turn. And in fact, like players that have been playing a long time, you'll see them not even play anything until like turn 3 because they're setting up, and you might be throwing a bunch of power at a problem. They're just sitting there banking because they're just waiting on their combo. So don't feel like you have to like fill the board up with friends. Like back to I think it was like Cinder 9.
Right.
Hold on to those tokens if they're not going to do anything for you this turn.
Yeah. There was a game at our championship, I believe it was in the semifinals, where someone banked until they had 8 tokens. Actually went to 9 tokens because their opponent had scored. Like they were just waiting for that one big play with a bunch of friends. And sometimes that's the right call.
That's like every game against my wife. She sits on like 12, and I just shit my pants when she starts playing them because it's just like boom, all the cards.
Admittedly, it is funny. I played against a couple of people. They know me for using my action tokens pretty quickly. So the few games I actually started conserving my tokens and really just holding back, it freaked them the crap out. It's like, what are you going to be playing against me? What are you doing saving for?
I will say this: if your opponent is using the ultra rare Luna main and you start seeing them bank past 6 tokens, immediately start scoring as fast as you can. That is a deck strategy. It's out right now called Pace, and all it is they bank until they have 23 tokens,
about 20 to 25 tokens.
And they're waiting for one combo to get in their hand, and once it gets in there, they can make their deck loop repeatedly. And all they're doing is scoring off of Fashion Week. And that's all they're doing is cycling their deck repeatedly to Fashion Week you to death. And under current floor rules, turns do not have time limits as long as the player is actually doing something. So they will literally sit there and grind out playing through their deck 10 times in a turn because it's generating its own tokens. So that's one situation where being really aware of what your opponent has on the board is good. So Luna Ultra Rare main, if they start banking, you need to start moving quickly. Yeah. And you don't have to win the game in 2 or 3 turns, but if you can score really high, if they have
be prepared to score to 11 before your turn combo goes off.
Yeah, because the deck doesn't have great flip power, especially with some of those cards in there. So
the way I explained this, I think, to you, Neil, I talked to a few people in our play group about it, but if you're ever playing against Ace, and you're going to get to that point, score to 2 or 3, and then draw your whole hand, and then discard keep everything but your 5s and 6s in your discard pile, and then when it comes for their combo to go off, well, obviously you don't want to just score to 2 or 3, but try to bank, draw a little every turn, try to get to 9 or 10 points, drawing every turn, only discarding 5s and 6s. When it comes to their combo going off, you will only have a discard pile of 5s and 6s with a deck with only very small amount of 2s and 3s and 4s, so that when they end up doing their own Fashion Week combo, you'll win half the face-offs and they'll let you win.
Now, yellow.
Of course, that might be a little bit more into complicated territory at this point, but still little good information though. Mm-hmm. All right, well, let's get on to the last little sin here, and then we'll actually get into some real tips that you can use instead of things that you shouldn't do, and shame. This one actually is a really big one, just because there's been so much confusion regarding it, and it is a useful card, but not useful the way some people think. The color splashers. Splashers are not boosters.
This is all I will say about this as 2 new players. Make sure you read every word on a card before you play it, because this happens way more often than you would expect, where someone plays Royal Guidance or plays Getting Hoops Dirty and then goes, okay, well, now I can confront this problem in the score phase. And it's no, you can't, because it's only for the phase. And they go, well, what do you mean? Oh, it does say phase. Whoops, I thought that was something else.
Terminology.
It doesn't give yellow and purple to any character. It has to already be one of those colors for the fixers.
Yep. Sometimes I'll put those in the deck and think, oh, this will be perfect, and then, oh shit, I don't have a pink card to play this.
Of course, these aren't too bad if you actually are comboing off a second color and you're just having difficulty trying to get that second color out, and you have maybe a 2 or a 3 pink and you've got a pink blue. Yep. Yeah, these cards definitely will save you if you're having issues with trying to get the second color out. Yeah. Otherwise, it's just basically that's what they're for. They're to help you get cards out during main phases. They are not boosters.
There's a reason they call them fixers.
Yep.
They fix
They're
your
great
problems.
for when you're trying to play something like Nurse Red Heart, which has 4 yellow requirement, but you're running yellow secondary, so it's hard to have that color out. If your deck, all your secondary friends that have a requirement of maybe 1 or 2, you really shouldn't have to run fixers unless your core strategy is to have a friend out by turn 3. Guys, Kessler.
All right. But yes, these are pretty much the cardinal rules that they have with building decks. What you shouldn't do. Let's actually go into what you should do for decks and some general strategies and tips. Starting off with the actual deck construction of colors. Now, a lot of people are going to assume right off the bat that you have to have 2 different colors in your deck, and that is not entirely the case. Of course, I found this out some interesting ways, and I even found some interesting ways to use your decks in different ways. Ways. Well, anyway, to start off, 2 colors is definitely a good roundabout. It's a good solid base to start on if you're learning the game. But you can actually have multiple colors. You can actually have what I'm terming. I'm pretty sure it has its own term, and this is just something I came up with, but I call it a color splash deck. You basically have one solid color, and you have a splash of everything else that is basically it's colorless cards that you can bring out, but they're there to satisfy the not this color requirements for problem cards.
It's a valid strategy, and that's why I did in set 1. When you run problems that don't really have more than 2, maybe, depending on the problem, maybe 3, or, well, that's as high as they go. But yeah, if you don't mind not having the dedicated utility from a lot of the other colors, you can run the friends that benefit your primary color the most. Like, I ran yellow as my primary color, but I had stuff like Bright Bulb, Action Shot, things like that in the deck that would help me. Like, they had effects I could use, but it made the deck a little more streamlined because you weren't having to get play requirement out for all these other cards for your secondary color. And if you didn't pull those, and you were stuck with the utility in your hand that you could play, when you just run like off-color friends that you have a use for and nothing else, it makes the deck super mobile and a lot more consistent.
Yeah, it's not very uncommon to see something like a white-pink deck have Lady Justice in there, even though she's purple, just because she works. She controls the board.
Yep. You'll at least know you'll always be able to play what's in your hand if you have the action decks. You don't have to worry about the requirement, and that's really comforting if you just need to get to a problem.
Yeah.
The one big thing you have to remember with problem cards is that usually it's a cost color of one type and a non-cost color. It doesn't have to be specifically a whole other color. Of course, there are exceptions. Again, every rule has a few exceptions. But then again, if you have these problem cards, hopefully you've actually designed a 2-color deck to work with them. Or you're just crazy, I don't know. Though there are some other cases I've seen where people don't follow the rules strictly like that, but yeah, essentially you don't need to have 2 solid colors. Of course, you can splash in other colors if you like. Or, yeah, you can go 2 solid, and in some cases, I think some people have actually done a 3-color deck, though those haven't worked out too well at times.
Well, and also, the big problem here is definition of what is monocolor and what is bicolor, what is tricolor, because there's a lot of debate. Like, someone might call, oh, well, if you run all blue friends and then just run Reforest Owl, is that mono blue, or is that blue yellow slash, or is it blue yellow? And honestly, there's no real answer to that. It's kind of, I would call it blue yellow slash, just because that's a pretty common terminology for it. But some people might argue, well, no, it's blue yellow because there's yellow cards in it. And yeah, it's you run with what you got and make sure you're able to play on your problems reliably. But other than that, you can it's a loose rule about running other colors. Like, the game requires you to run other colors, but you can be more lenient in how you do it as long as it works.
And a rule of thumb I found is usually you want at least 6 friends that have no requirement for your off color, and that's like the lowest I would ever go, and I would probably include the color fixers in there. But I've seen decks that go anywhere between 6 to 9. The deck I'm using right now is 12 of my off color, but that's because it's new Pinky and she needs fodder. So
because she turns the whole field into a blender.
Yeah, that's her. That's a special case. But yeah, usually like 6 to 9. Color fixers are really good when you have a low number of friends. And in fact, if you're running a deck that like needs high flip power, going with 6 friends if you're off color and then having the fixers in there is great because they have 4 flip.
Of course, one thing I do got to throw out there, you can actually, it is entirely possible to run a monocolored deck. Granted, don't expect to ever solve your problems, literally. One thing in mind is I saw a construction of a Pinkie Pie deck that relied solely on making sure your opponent never wanted to touch your trouble cards.
Yep.
And you kept focusing on your opponent's troubles to get the scores. Granted, I don't know how well it would have worked, but it was definitely an interesting thinking outside of the box idea.
I've seen it once with one guy in our play group, and it works well. It's more of a mind game than it is like just brawling all over the board. Because if you've got like 6, 7 ones and New Pinky sitting at their problem that you can actually tag, then they're not going to throw their spring forward at it because you can just murder it. On the next turn. It's tricky. It works if your opponent doesn't know what you're doing. But once they figure it out, it's a bit of a different story.
All right. Okay, well, getting into that actually leads up to the next tip that we have for building a deck. Have a plan and a focus for the deck. This is one thing I keep breaking royally, and I really have a hard time with. You know, some decks are built to swarm. Some decks are built to rely on the points of a troublemaker. Some points are meant to completely crush problems. Some are meant to steal points randomly just for the sake of it, and also stop your opponent with Octavia. The thing is that all of them have one specific goal, and the rest of the cards are there to help achieve that goal. Me, on the other hand, I seem to do a little bit of everything from gaining action tokens to summoning out powerful troublemakers to beating down the board with giant purples. Of course, again, that's a problem that I have and I really, really got to work on, but the fact is I know that it's a problem, and I can attest, yes, you need to have a deck with a focus.
Yeah, the important thing to remember, and these are incredibly rough numbers that are obviously going to change for every deck, but this is just kind of going off the deck I have right now. The general idea of my deck is to win by attrition because it's a Frighten-based deck. And I win by attrition by blocking problems with troublemakers and or villains, playing fairly cheap individual friends, continually frightening when there's a troublemaker face-off. But the whole idea is that my main idea is attrition. There are about 9 to 12 cards in my deck that are the core attrition. The other, like 28 to 30, whatever the 30-something or 20-something cards are in that deck, are only meant just to make that happen. Like, some of them are AT Generation, some of them are General Control, like Lady Justice, Ultimate Organizer, Ursa Vanquisher. But at the end of the day, it's all about feeding the attrition engine. And you kind of have to work with it that way. You have to say, what is my deck going to do? What are the, 9, 15 cards? Again, very, very, very rough estimate that my deck has to have to work. The essentials. And then everything else is literally, how can I help make them better?
Nice. I can't say it any better. Can anybody else say it any better?
No, he's exactly right. It's when you're looking at a card to put in your deck. Does it support what the main thought of it does? Like in DJ's deck is like, does the cards support either? Does it help frighten things? Does it facilitate the frightening of things? Does it help defend the problems? Which is what it's meant to do. Yeah, yeah, he clearly said it better than I did.
Yeah. Of course,
I'll just stop talking so everyone else.
Well, somebody brought up a quick thought here on theme decks. To my knowledge, I don't recall the theme decks actually focusing on a particular thing. Though they do focus a little bit on what that card specialized, at least in the core set. Rarities did a lot of Inspired. Pinkie Pie was full of randoms. Twilight had definitely Brain.
Studious?
Yeah,
Brain.
Studious. Twilight had Studious. So, yeah, the starter decks do give you a bit of a rough idea of how to get a deck to focus. At the same time, though, the structure decks were also designed to have 2 different pony leads, so it kind of makes it a little interesting if you play one and then the other.
Yeah, they're more or less meant to show off the set. They're not really there to win games. They can, and they have, but it's just, there's not enough synergy there. It's more or less just to say, hey, here's what's here. And if you find a card that you like when you're testing out the deck, you can kind of build a deck around that.
Yep, yeah. It's a great way to learn the game. I would not go into a tournament with one unless you're either crazy or you have a really interesting plan.
Yeah, the starter decks are a marketing tool.
Like
there are usually a lot of beginner-friendly cards in them as well, because starter decks are meant to be the first purchase in that game for a new player. Like, if you're playing Magic for the first time, you're expected to buy one of the decks. For Pony, they expect you to buy either a 2-player kit if you're playing with a friend or a starter deck. So there are cards in those starter decks that will currently never see play in a regular deck. No one will play Flim. It just won't happen. If you play Flim, God help you. Like, That's just how it is. So never expect, like, starter decks are great investments. They obviously have exclusive cards, fixed cards, and mains that you will want to have, but they're not really an inspiration for how to make synergy happen.
All right. And I'm getting a little bit more into the merchandise side of the card game here. This is actually one I had to bring up after I saw a few posts in the My Little Pony Collectible card game Facebook I'm in. Sleeves. If you are going to play at least somewhat competitively, or you want to at least protect your card, buy sleeves. Some of them can be cheap and be penny sleeves. You can maybe spend a few bucks, get some of the pony sleeves, or it'd be ridiculous, get some of those dragon shields out there that for some reason are ridiculously high priced, but get some sleeves. It's horrible when I see people shuffling their cards and then they decide to do something a little bit different and then they suddenly split their card in half. It's even worse when it's a rare card.
Yeah, we saw a picture of a truly outrageous that happened too. The guy had sleeves on. It was just another card, got chopped into the sleeve just right. So, at any rate, that said, yeah, I would definitely suggest going with sleeves. The sleeves with prints have their merit to them, especially if you're just playing the game to have fun. And you don't really play that often. The Raymond knows, or excuse me, DJ knows.
Yeah, that's whatever. I don't care.
DJ knows the science behind it better than I do. But basically, sleeves that can be printed on are usually of a lower quality material, and they'll wear out faster than some of the other ones. Like, what is the brand that we buy? KMC? Is that what it's called?
I'm personally a fan of KMC.
Yeah,
there are a lot. If you really want to get into hardcore sleeve decisions, like, you could have a whole little mini sode about that kind of stuff, because you literally, if the way you shuffle will determine different brand longevity of your sleeves. Like, I don't mass shuffle, which is where you take the cards, you sort of smash them together as you're shuffling. I don't do that. So KMC sleeves will last me a lifetime. Well, not literally a lifetime. As far as card games are concerned,
they'll last a pretty long time.
7 to 10 months, which is a lifetime for card games. Like, I've been using the same set of KMCs that I bought in January, and they're still technically tournament legal, but I would probably not play them in a tournament. I'd just switch out my sleeves. But that's because I don't mash. Those sleeves are kind of susceptible to getting a little warped with mashing. Ultra Pro, though, they just tend to not last as long in general anyway. But
I don't know.
Every brand has their strengths and weaknesses for that kind of stuff.
I haven't had too many problems with Ultra Pro. Well, the one that really, unfortunately, did some irking to me was Dragon Shield, especially with how much I had to pay for those things. I usually did mash shuffling. Nowadays, though, I do a three stack shuffle to do a little bit more.
The reason you buy those, I think it was Darren that told us this, is because they come in 100 in a pack. That's more or less for special game mode and Magic where you have a 100 card deck. Commander, yeah, they're just really cheap. That's all it's for, is to make 100 card decks. If you were cheap,
those things were like $12.
If you ask me as someone who's getting into it and wants to protect their investment, but doesn't have a lot of money to spend on sleeves, I personally would say go with clear sleeves. And I say this for this card game because, number one, it lets you put your main in a sleeve, and you don't have to keep taking it in and out every time you flip your main. Like, when I see people that do that, I cringe for their cards because, it's not like any other card where you can, pull another one in a pack. You have, well, unless it's the uncommon mains now. But with Premier Mains, you'd have to buy a whole another starter deck, and good luck with that in about 2 months.
It'd be even worse if you had one of the Hot Topic ones.
Yeah, so get clear sleeves, because then you can, if one busts, you're always going to be able to find clear sleeves to replace it with. And it allows you to have your main in a sleeve. So, if you go to ship it and put it top loader, it just looks nice.
And I don't believe in this game there's really any restriction with having your main in a clear sleeve anyway, and all the rest of your cards in colored.
Yeah, for tournament play, the main character, the draw deck, and the problem deck can all have different sleeves because they're different decks.
Right.
So.
And in some cases, it might be encouraged if you have a hard time keeping it organized.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
it's annoying to shuffle your problem deck into your regular deck.
Yeah. All right, and also real fast, boxes. Sleeves are good. Boxes help out as well. I've had cards that were in sleeves. I would carry them around in my pocket or in backpacks and stuff. And luckily, I haven't had anything like that happen. With
sure, I have your pocket. I would probably punch you in the face.
Yeah,
I would do the same thing if you had your deck rubber banded.
Oh, dear world. But yes, boxes. Yeah, admittedly, that's a few more bucks, but boxes do tend to protect your deck, and they also look pretty cool, especially if you want to sound intimidating and just smack that hard box on the table like, okay, you want to bring it? All right.
If you want to be really ghetto about it, Tupperware works just fine.
That works too. But
Just
that's if you're
anything
really
that keeps stuff
desperate.
from pushing on cards.
Yep. Yep. And believe me, boxes are not that expensive. You can get them $2-3 pretty cheaply if you need to go for the absolute cheap. And finally, don't worry if you do not know all rules. Admittedly, I don't know all the specific rules in the games. I know enough that I can play it. I can do it confidently. If it got into some really tough semantics, I'd probably have to look up a few things. But, you know, you just have to know enough to actually play the game. You'll pick up the rest as you go.
Everyone starts out knowing nothing.
Yes, and besides, if you actually tried to read the freaking compilation rule, they have their own subsections for everything. You're going to lose your mind fast.
Yeah, the comprehensive rules are for hardcore players, tournament organizers, and judges to explain rulings up at the table. If you're going to compete at a big tournament, it's good to at least have gone through them. But other than that, you more or less, if you have a question about something, then you just kind of look it up and figure it out. But no, not every player, like, before you buy a starter deck, don't think you have to read comprehensive rules, because you will just sit there confused. It won't matter, because you've never played the game before. But the comprehensive rules are for people who have played the game a little bit. They kind of understand the basics. They've read the rule book. Now they have ruling questions, and it's time to kind of pop it open, take a peek at it.
And some people are nice enough. You could just take your deck, say, "I don't know how to play. Do you want to teach me?" They'll give you a walkthrough and probably beat down as well at the same time. But they'll at least let you know how to play the game pretty competently.
Okay, Rayo, take your rubber band off. Put it in a Ziploc bag. If you don't have a Ziploc bag, something is wrong. Second of all, I don't know if the topic has been covered yet, but as far as I'm aware, Robbie, you've built some monsters before, but a deck should never have more than 50 cards. I wouldn't go above 48 under any circumstances, but when you have more than 50 cards, you can't even really figure out what's wrong with your deck or what you should trim, because the deck is so, like, clunky.
Does that make sense? Magic.
Yes.
Yeah, we covered it earlier. But
yeah, well, we did. Okay. We definitely got into it a little bit. But yeah, just to reiterate, do not go over 50 cards. 45 is the minimum that you need. There's a reason why that people tend to stick with a minimum for any card game.
It's the legal minimum, statistic maximum.
Yeah. Plus the fact, if you ever played a game with over 100, I'm not kidding. I've actually played Yu-Gi-Oh games with some people that did have 100 card decks, and even I had like a 60 card deck. I couldn't get anything out. It was a horrible experience. I kept getting destroyed. It was only when I finally started to slimmer it down did I finally get an edge, and then my decks got stolen. But that's a whole other case. But, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. Actually, CMC, you don't have to build a huge deck for the Elements of Harmony cards to work. And I'll go ahead and throw the linchpin at you. It's Element of Generosity. I'll let you work it out. I thought about it, but anyway, keep going.
All right. But yeah, I believe that pretty much covers up everything that we have here, unless you guys have anything else to throw out there in regards to tips and hints for deck construction.
I have one last piece of advice for deck construction.
Shoot.
Play what you like. Don't feel pressured by a metagame or by what your local people play. Like, if you seriously just want to play a certain character, it's the My Little Pony collectible card game, but the two important parts of that are My Little Pony in-game. Always remember that. Do not feel like you have to play a certain way. You can play however you want.
Hey, I've played Twilight Sparkle since Core came out, and some people would say that that's a cardinal sin in itself. But
well, I'd like to show them my purple pink in that case.
Wait, you have a purple pink? I have to talk with you about that a little bit.
That
wow.
To piggyback on that though, like definitely play the one you want, and especially if you're starting with the game. If you're a Pinkie Pie fan, start with Pinkie Pie. Start there. If you want to learn how to play effectively, like if you really want to like hone your skill,
compete.
Play a little bit of everyone.
Yeah.
Like start with Pinkie, move to someone else, move to another, learn how they play. So then once you go back to home and play your favorite deck with your favorite main, you'll know how to play against those other decks better because you know how they work because you've played them.
Do what Daddy told you not to do and go into college and experiment.
Another quick thing I can suggest, though, if you really want to try some interesting stuff, you could try looking at deck lists and see about playing them out. But be careful not to just build your decks around other people's deck ideas. Unfortunately, that gets into cookie cutter territory, and then you literally have about one half of an entire population in a card tournament playing the exact same deck. And then
So
you get
there's
trounced
either
by
meta
that
or
one
stuff to beat meta.
You get trounced by that one person who decided
Yeah.
to play something different and actually knows how to combat them all.
Yeah, there'll always be the meta,
Oh, yeah.
the counter meta, and the rogue decks.
And I will say this, like,
I
if you're in
play
a
rogue
play
deck.
group, when you're in a play group and you have a deck that works really well, like it trounces everyone all the time, and it's like, great, your deck works, awesome, but the people in your play group aren't having fun because they can't, like, it's a little bit of a slippery slope, and it's definitely like, what I'm saying is applicable, but like, when you have a deck that works really well, but you have players in your group that are really struggling, like, to learn the deck, and they can't even figure out how to get their deck to work because, like, yours just beats them by turn 6 every time. Like, experiment with other colors for a little while. Just help your play group grow. That's another important thing that I think people in this game are starting to miss, is they're so focused on how well they're doing and how their decks perform. They're not looking at helping their group grow.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to experiment, because, like, your deck might work really well, and you can come back to that in a couple weeks. Try something else to get out of your comfort zone. Experiment a little bit, like they were saying, not only for yourself but for your play group. It's going to help everyone in the long run.
Yeah, every game has a social contract, and it's always about winning all the time, and you are creating toxicity, and people are wanting to not play because of how you are playing, and you refuse to work with anyone, you are breaking the social contract of your game.
Yeah. Besides, in all honesty, it is kind of fun to play something different. I tried Pinkie Pie once, and that was kind of silly. Almost beat a completely constructed deck with a Pinkie Pie structure. How fun is that?
Yeah.
Then sometimes you'll get, when you play with that one goof around deck, you might figure something out. Like, you may stumble upon something that may not be like the top competitive for that deck at that time in your particular play group, but you may get that idea that you take into a deck in the future that completely wrecks shit. So, like, if you keep that open mind, you may learn something, and it's really fun.
Because last set, yellow-white was not competitive at all, and now look where it is.
Nope.
What, really? I knew white was, but was it white blue? Anyway, we can get back to that later. I think we pretty much we definitely gave a lot of good ideas here for people on how to play, how to construct their decks. Now, for those of you who are interested and want to get some advice or some places to check out and get more information or ask your questions or things like that, I have 4 different sites to bring out to you and a few other suggestions. The first one, this is one of the first websites I actually started to frequent rant constantly for information and tips. Pony Card. I know I talked about it before, but they do have some great articles that they bring out every week or so. They also have their own forums, a glossary, and even a podcast that they just started doing in regards to the game and tips and tricks. I haven't had a chance to listen to it, but it looked good all around, and it definitely is worth a listen. Check out at least. Next thing, Ponyhead. This is a very great utility for anybody who is interested in either showing their deck, trying different card ideas, or even seeing what cards are out there and available. Right now, it has all of the cards for Premier and Canterlot Knights, and I'm sure that they will update with all of the other cards as they come out. So if you want to see what's available, if you want to try to come up with some ideas in regards to a blue deck or purple deck, you can narrow down the decks, you can narrow down the cards, you can start searching up the cards you do have, everything like that. Ponyhead, great place to do it. Next, Enterplay. It actually does have comprehensive rules. If you are interested in that, Google Enterplay comprehensive rules, or just look on our show notes. We will have that as well. One other place I could suggest, Reddit. Reddit has their own My Little Pony collectible card game thread here. There's plenty of posts up for different rules and suggestions, questions on deck building, and also decks that were used in different regional tournaments. So if you want to get some ideas, take a look at some of the decks that were out there and did nasty things. And hey, yes, Equestria is even up here.
Yeah, we have tournament players who both attended and ran tournaments. We had our state championships in 2 regions this last weekend at various conventions. People will post tournament reports on site every tournament. I'm actually, when I leave here in a couple minutes, I'm actually going to be finishing writing up our tournament report and everything.
Awesome.
I will say right now, we normally have a weekly ask basically beginners thread where it's up for 7 days and new players can ask, even if they think they have a stupid rule question. There are no stupid questions on this thread. You can ask whatever you want. People will be there to answer your questions. There has been times where a developer has popped in and answered a question. Currently the sticky post is not the beginner thread. It's actually a Ask Us Anything that the developers will be doing during the playtesting retreat this weekend. Everyone can post their questions for the next week, and over the weekend they'll be answering everyone's questions, everyone's rules, and they'll be talking about card design and all that stuff. So there are developer and playtester interactions there.
I will say this though, developers can give rulings. I wouldn't hunt them down for rulings.
No.
Because they are several sets ahead of us, both in terms of what cards are out, what potential errata they have, what the rulings are going to be when those sets come out. And I'm not saying they don't know what they're doing. They do know what they're doing, but they're so far ahead. Sometimes things get a little muddy, and they'll give you a ruling that, like, we don't.
They're giving you a
yet.
ruling that won't be legal for another 6 months. That contradicts the ruling now, and that's what happened very few times. And they've been letting the community answer more questions as the game has gone on, which is very good. Definitely rely on the comprehensive rules and the community. Always look for comprehensive rules, look for errata, and look for community members. There's a reason that at every major card game has this rule that developers of the game will never be judges at tournaments for that specific reason, because the developers have other things to think about. And really, if they end up also judging, that just complicates things for everyone involved. It's better just to keep a separate entity. I know the game's going to have an official judging program, and then there will be like official rules people their job will be to answer those questions. That isn't out now, but that will be coming because the game is growing from a competitive standpoint.
All right. And finally, for the last little bits of places to go, the Reddit of the MLP Collectible Card Game Reddit has plenty of awesome stuff links. There are a lot of other things that even I haven't had a chance to take a look at yet. And finally, if you are on Facebook, there are several different card game groups that I'm a part of. Some of them are regional in Utah. And for me, they'll probably have regional ones for in your area as well. You can also check out just general collective card game group strategies and deck building tips and just plain goof around decks threads. There's plenty of places to go for lots of information. All you have to do is just go where you enjoy the most and take a look. And remember,
will say this: if you already covered the singles market,
I have not actually, but that would probably be a good one to throw out here real fast, at least for a if you really want to get competitive with this, or you're after specific cards. Do you have any specific place, or should I just throw eBay up there?
I linked it. There's actually two major places you should check. There's eBay, and then there's Haluz, haluz.org/MLP. Haluz takes a variety of e-tailers and compares prices, shows trends, like whether the prices are going up and down, and will give you the fair price and the low price. I would use Haluz for when you're trading, and use a combination of Haluz and eBay for when you want to buy singles, because you might find a steal on eBay, but at the same time a price might seem great on eBay, and then you check Haluz, like, oh, Toy Wiz had a sale and that card was $10 cheaper. Crap.
Okay, then I got a really dumb question for you. Where did you link it?
In the Brony Show chat. I'll link it here.
Chat.
Oh, okay, that chat. Oh, right. Yeah, I know of Haluz, so I can. Yep, Haluz is definitely a good one to go to. I've pulled it up a few times just to get an idea of card prices and everything. But yeah, if you're after specific expensive single cards, Haluz, yeah, that's a good one. eBay is also a good one. I actually picked up the promo Nightmare Moon off of eBay, and oh dear world, that hurt. But maybe I got it now though, because they're going back up in price pretty heavily. Whew.
I will say this: do not base the worth of a promo card on the first 2 weeks that it comes out. And I'll put that for ultra rares on sets as well, because prices are always astronomically high when a card first hits the market. Because
$40 cards from 19.
Of course, it's always a good idea to try selling the promo card, promo and rare cards you get right off the bat. You're more than likely going to get a profit out of it.
Unless you want to keep them.
Unless you want to keep them, or you don't want to risk maybe them getting it more expensive.
Yeah.
But yes, in any case, I believe that should wrap it all up. Remember, the show notes will have links to all of these different resources, and otherwise, good luck with your deck building and good luck gaming. And I believe that should be about it for at least DJ Allegro here.
Yep, I gotta go do work.
I got to dip as well.
All right, so why don't you two give a quick shout out here before we move on to the video segment? I'll start with DJ.
Oh, shoutouts.
Anything
what?
and anything you want.
Anything. I'll be at BronyCon. Actually, so will keep on calling you Twin Sevens because that's your Skype thing. Checkmate. Checkmate and I are actually going to. Well, it's Checkmate's panel. I'll be on it. We're going to be doing a beginner's guide to the My Little Pony collectible card game on Friday afternoon at 1:45. If you guys are not playing in Flight 1 of the regional, and you want to learn a little bit more about the game, not necessarily mechanics, but just sort of how the game plays and what's fun about it, check it out.
We may have some decks to give away too.
Maybe some goodies.
Some goodies,
some promos, some shiny things,
some good stuff.
Well, at least try to drop in and say hi.
Sure thing.
I might try to be in those the original flights as well. So
you're gonna have some potatoes.
Some potatoes. Those cards have a lot of calories.
Okay, and Checkmate.
Harmonize with me, maggot.
Okay, that works.
Basically the same thing. Just come see us at our panel. The time for it's kind of shifted back and forth, but yes, take a look and come see us. Come say hi.
All right, and with that, we'll go ahead and let go of our two massive heavy card players here. They definitely have given us a lot of great advice, a lot of follow through on some of the rules and guidelines here. Just remember, though, it is a game. Have fun with it any way you want. If you want to play one of every single card in the game in a 100 card deck, I'm not going to stop you.
People have done it
for science.
For science, for science, or just to drive people crazy. Go for it.
No.
And thanks for having us on.
Of course, it was our pleasure.
What's Steve Perry?
Happy to be here.
All right, let's go ahead and get moving on here. Blinked, are you still there?
Adios.
See ya.
I think he might have been out.
He might have tapped out, or I wanted to give D a chance to at least say hi and talk about Fiesta Equestria a little bit. But I guess we'll go ahead, move right on to the video segment here, especially since we took a little bit longer than expected. Just real fast, for those of you who are interested, somebody took all the little animations from the My Little Pony review so far, and you can actually look at them separately here in a little flash panel that you can pick up on the show notes. It's pretty awesome. You just go to season and episode, and you get to see the different little ones that they have. Oh, this is so cute.
So is it safe for me to have my own voice again?
Yes, it is.
Wait, we're supposed to mute? Oh, shit.
Huh?